The U.S. Navy has conducted dozens of these freedom of navigation patrols across the Taiwan Strait. However, April 24, 2025 became something else. In the early morning, the USS William P. Lawrence, a guided missile destroyer, glided silently through calm waters. The horizon was open, the skies were clear, and it appeared to be just another transit of a warship from a distance. The air was electric beneath the placid exterior, though. One of the most dangerous flashpoints in the world, the Taiwan Strait has the potential to completely upset the Indo-Pacific's equilibrium with a single misstep. Additionally, there was enough tension on this Tuesday morning to cut with a knife. Beijing takes the lead. China quickly took notice. The PLA Eastern Theater Command released an official statement just hours after the Lawrence entered the strait. The phrase, which was roughly translated, was direct. "We see you, and we're not happy." The message was emphasized by state-run media, which said that Chinese fighter planes and destroyers had been sent to follow the American ship. Online users started sharing grainy drone footage of a PLA Navy Type 052D destroyer cautiously following. Graphics of radar tracks were shared on social media. On Chinese television, military commentators wearing immaculate Navy uniforms declared that Beijing would not tolerate foreign provocation. "You're not welcome here," was the clear message. But from the American perspective, quiet. No dramatic Pentagon press conferences, no tweets from Pacific Command, and no video clips sent to CNN. Simply holding its course, the USS Lawrence moved calmly and purposefully from east to west. The U.S. Navy claimed that what China called a serious provocation was just another routine mission. However, upon closer inspection, this was anything but typical. Why this transit mattered? The Navy uses Freedom of Navigation Operations, FUMS, to challenge maritime claims that Washington considers unlawful or excessive. Without requesting authorization, the U.S. makes a statement. Your unilateral rules are not applicable here. International law is. South China Sea, Gulf of Persia, the Sea of Black, the Strait of Taiwan. These invisible lines have been followed by the Navy for many years. The stakes are higher in 2025, though. More than before, Beijing has been working to portray the Taiwan Strait as internal waters, asserting that it is a part of China's territorial seas. It is an attempt to rewrite the rules of global navigation, not just rhetoric. Therefore, the USS Lawrence was not merely on patrol when it entered those waters. It was entering a political and legal storm that could quickly turn from shadowboxing to shooting. The quiet replica. The Lawrence appeared to be alone to the untrained eye. There was darkness on its AIS transponder. The ship wasn't updating civilian systems with its position. Don't be misled, though. She wasn't truly alone. Every Chinese ship, every radar ping, every plane ascending from mainland bases was tracked by American reconnaissance satellites overhead. Drones flying at high altitudes circled over the strait, giving the Pentagon live footage. It is highly probable that a Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarine lurked somewhere below the surface, prepared to watch or obstruct should the situation become dangerous. Without several layers of contingency, the United States does not steam a destroyer into disputed waters. Beijing was aware of this, and part of the deterrence was that knowledge. According to Taiwan's Defense Ministry's PLA response reports and open-source trackers' leaked chatter, several J-16 fighter planes passed near Lawrence's road. Not close enough to justify an armed reaction, but close enough to indicate presence. Pilots on both sides are well versed in that fine line, because things could have quickly gotten out of hand if one radar lock had been misinterpreted or if one fighter had come too close. When Aegis fighting systems sense that a ship is being targeted, they act without hesitation. Although they are designed to prevent unintentional conflicts, the rules of engagement are poorly implemented. The entire passage by Lawrence was a calculation. Every move the PLA made was a risk to keep the balance in check. A bigger chessboard. The area glowed once more, this time to the south rather than across the strait, as the Lawrence sank back into the Pacific haze. Exercise Balakatan was starting just 100 miles away, on the other side of the Luzon Strait. The yearly drill between the United States and the Philippines had grown to its largest size ever. With amphibious landings planned in full view of the Pacific, 14,000 soldiers, dozens of ships and aircraft, and HIMARS rocket systems unload onto beaches. The timing was not coincidental. After China claimed to have shadowed the Lawrence, the U.S., on Philippine territory, Marines were setting up fire positions. Freedom of navigation was only one aspect of this. The battle space needed to be shaped. Beijing's own flex. In the days before, China had not been idle. The Shandong Carrier Strike Group of the PLA Navy had just flown by the northern Philippines within Manila's exclusive economic zone before the Lawrence's transit. Authorities in the Philippines were taken aback by the maneuver, which led to rapid radar scans and air patrols. Beijing's message was clear: we can also flank you. It didn't land cleanly, though, if that was the PLA's intention. Rather, it strengthened Manila's determination. Balikatan 2025 is an obvious demonstration of Allied unity as the Philippines strengthened its relationship with Washington. Stories collide. The radios carried stories, if the seas carried steel. The state media in China went into overdrive. Anchors named the U.S. transit reckless and illegal. It was described in commentary as an irresponsible act of muscle flexing meant to disturb the tranquility. The message was clear. Beijing wants the world to think that the Taiwan Strait is internal and untouchable, just like a Chinese river crossing. International law, however, doesn't agree. The Taiwan Strait is recognized as international waters by the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, which China has ratified. It cannot be handled any other way by the United States and its allies. Like the English Channel or the Strait of Gibraltar, the strait is a global route. It's not an academic dispute over interpretations. It's a calculated move. Every U.S. transit becomes an escalation if Beijing persuades the world to consider the strait to be domestic. However, Beijing's narrative will deteriorate if the United States continues to move through without hesitation. Behind the silence, steel. The reality on the water was more measured and less dramatic, as China displayed videos of J-16s and destroyer tails. Undisturbed by harassment, the Lawrence remained firm. Beijing is unhappy that following an enemy isn't a good way to gauge control. It is evaluated by influencing the enemy's subsequent actions. And the United States set the pace in this round. The calm glide of the destroyer was more than just a transit. The message was, where international law permits, we shall sail. We won't recoil. We will not request permission. Aftershocks. Every detail was documented behind the scenes by U.S. Pacific Command, including ship maneuvers, airplane trajectories, electronic signals, and cyber probes that suspiciously rose across American and Allied networks in the hours following the passage. Although Beijing wasn't afraid, it was uneasy enough to change course. More quickly than planned, PLA frigates were abruptly called back to sea. Air patrols grew. Unexpected radar interference across civilian ships was reported by Taiwan. This was likely caused by Chinese early warning systems searching for submarines. The pace was quickening, and this time it wasn't Washington's doing it. Beijing was responding. The more important game. In actuality, the United States wasn't merely experimenting. Beijing itself was being put to the test. Would the PLA run the risk of things getting worse? Would China try to block it physically? Would the gray zone intimidation tactics work? For years, China's strategy assumed that time would work in its favor, that friends would drift under economic pressure, that Taiwan would feel more alone, and that the United States would eventually grow weary of the Pacific grind. The events of April 2025, however, demonstrate the opposite. Beijing's red lines are drawn back with each incident-free U.S. transit. Regional defenses are strengthened by each Balikatan exercise. Each PLA flyover chipped away at the bluff with ally reinforcement. You also lose leverage when your opponent stops being afraid of